Here's our little yard. Too small for a pool or chickens, let alone a game of tag or touch football. Then again, this stubborn patch of crabgrass is just big enough to get down flat on our backs with eyes wide open and face the whole gray sky just as a good drizzle begins. I know we've had a monsoon of grieving to do, which is why I promise to lie beside you for as long as you like or need. We'll let our elbows kiss under the downpour until we're soaked like two huge nets left beside the seas whose heavy old ropes strain strout with fish. If I had to, we could feed a multitude with our sorrows. If we had to, we could name a loss for every other drop of rain. All these foreign flowers you plant from pot to plot with muddy fingers, passion, jasmine, tuberose. We'll sip the dew from them. My darling, here is the door, I promise. Here is our broken bowl. Here, my hands, in the home of our dreams. The windows open, in every weather, doused or dry. May we never be so parched. This is the Mac Oligarchy podcast, and I'm your host, Tim McClone. That was a poem by Patrick Rosal. Yes, it will rain, or prayer for our first poem. I was going through poems a while back, and I put that in my archive file. That really touched me. How a couple trying to get their first home, and we're talking the trials and tribulations of settling down and not wanting to do that. And it just grabbed my heart, shall I say. So as crazy as this world is, remember this: God is in control. So as the U.S. national debt is going up $1 trillion every 100 days, I thought we'd start with a lighthearted story to kick off the podcast. I was getting my hair cut before I came into Vegas here. I'm in Las Vegas right now working, and we're looking at some investment property, and I think we're going to move on something. Fingers crossed, but it's an interesting market. I'm going to do an update on the YouTube channel about what's going on. And 5 of my top investor markets out east and some other ones. But it's interesting what I observed with new homes and builders and all this good stuff. I did about 800 miles of driving the other week, and I'm going to be doing a lot of driving into Boise, Idaho as well. So more to come on that. But, there's just so much of a downer out there right now. I thought we'd start with a positive story. So I was getting my hair cut before I came in to Las Vegas, and the girl that cuts my hair, she's really cool. She drives a 1970 Nova. She's got Chevy tattoo on her forearms, got tattoos all over, and she just carries herself really well. She's a Gemini. She doesn't take shit from anyone. I like that. That's why she cuts my hair, and she does a good job cutting hair as well. But I remember when I first met her, I was sitting in the waiting room, and I was watching her cut this gentleman's hair. And there was this girl, and long story short, it was his girlfriend. She was hovering over the chair and talking to her, and she was telling her how to cut her boyfriend's hair. And it went on, and she's pointing to his head, and this needs to be cut. And then she sat down, and then he finished his haircut, and he asked for that mirror, the dreaded mirror. And she pulled out the mirror and, did the front, did the 2 sides, did the back, and then he took the mirror from her and was looking at it, and I looked at her face, and she's looking at him, shaking her head just a little bit. You saw it in her eyes, and I started to laugh to myself. And then he put down the mirror and got up from the chair and then put his nose practically planted in the barber mirror, and is looking at the front of his scalp, the lines, the sides, the back. And then he sat back in the chair, and he said, "Hey, can you grab the mirror again?" He said, "You see that back there?" He's pointing. "Can you take a little off there? Can you take a little off there?" And it brought me back to a story back when I was in Santa Barbara, like 15 years ago, and I remember a barber telling me, "Man, I hate when people bring in their girlfriends or sometimes boyfriends and tell you how to cut the hair and tell us how to do our job." And I hate, Tim, oh, people look at mirrors and are just staring at themselves all day long how we should cut their hair. And I saw that going on. Fast forward, I never have pulled a mirror in 20 years. I never like looking at myself anyway. But I put, what I would say to you is, I put the respect into the barber. And I've had a lot of barbers over the last 20 years. And when I say to them, hey, listen, when they pull out the mirror, I say, I don't need that. I don't need that. I trust you. That's my standard line. I trust you. Don't worry. They kind of freak out and they're taken aback. But they respect that, because my point is, I'm assuming, and it's happened one time, that they didn't do a good job. But I'm assuming almost 10 out of 10 times, hair is going to be cut fine. And I want to show that barber respect that, hey, you did a good job. And every barber, when I tell this story to, they go, oh, God, I hate that. I hate when someone comes in here and tells us to cut their hair, or the individual's staring at the mirror and pulls the mirror. I mean, I get maybe a little bit, but my God, it's unbelievable. And I know that's the pet peeve of a hairstylist. And so I'm cognizant of it when I see it. And I just kind of chuckle to myself. Maybe I'm being a little mean. I know we all want to kind of maybe take care of ourselves, but my God. So with her, when I first met her, my new barber, my new stylist, she's a barber. She doesn't cut women's hair. She said, I can't deal with that. Women are too catty. I would never cut women's hair. So when I said to her, I remember I said, I trust you. I don't need the mirror. And she respected that. And, she does a good job. And I would just say that to you. They hate that. They hate that when you pull out the mirror and you're scrutinizing, and you get up. And then I love the ones, this guy, after he got up from the chair, she's the last chair, and you got to walk by the long mirror and the rest of the barber chairs before you can exit and get to the register desk to pay for your haircut. Well, he's looking himself all the way down, every barber in the mirror, and then it literally stopped and did like a little pose and turned his head to make sure the hair was all lined up from the front and back. My God. So, God, I think men could be worse than women in some respects. So, I think it just has to do with trust. And whatever, when I get my hair cut, I say, hey, based on I got a head like a vice. I said, I got a vice head. I got a really thin, long head. And I'm sure you know more than me. How do you think my hair should be cut? Whatever you want to do. I just like to put it back a little bit. I get a lot of respect, but I will say this. 9 out of 10 hairstylists don't know how to answer that. They say, well, what do you want? And I personally expect you, hey, look at my thin head. How would you cut my hair? And I expect the hairstylist to say, well, listen, based on your head, it looks like this, and you should probably do this. Do you like to put it back a little bit? Yeah, I like to put it like back, but I can wear it forward. But I'm going to tell you, there's only a few stylists out there that say that. Most of them don't know what the hell they're doing, in my opinion, when you ask them that question. I think they should know, because I'm going to tell you right now, I have no idea. So I like to get someone's opinion, and I go, hey, you're the expert. How should I have my hair cut? And this girl did that. She's like, hey, Tim, you got kind of a longer head. You should probably wear your hair short. It's very coarse. I didn't know my hair is coarse. I didn't even know what the hell that meant. And she goes, you're going to have to wear it short on the sides because it's coarse, and then you're going to have to put a lot of product in it. And I'm like, okay, just cut it short. I go, what do you think it should be on the sides? And she's like, boom, 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 done. So I would just say this, whatever profession you're getting service for, give them the trust. Give them the trust. They respect that. And don't be so anal. God, with your hair. I never have. I was like, just cut it and make it look presentable. But they don't like that mirror, folks. When you see someone pull out that mirror, I'm telling you, those hairstylists like, God damn, another one who loves the mirror. Don't do it. Don't do it. Okay, on a light note there. Right now we got to talk about some nasty stuff because it affects business. This channel, we focus on real estate entrepreneurship, business, finance, and of course politics because it affects business. And we do some lighthearted stories. I am a fitness junkie, so I like to throw that in at the end. We'll see about today. It just depends how I feel. That's used to be my life when I was at another life when I was younger. But I think it's important to talk about because a lot of people are into health and fitness, and we'll talk about that. So the big story in the news right now, folks, and I've talked about this on other podcasts, is the massive flood of illegal immigration. And to make no mistake about this, and this is not me talking right now, and I talked about this just briefly. The massive flood of illegal immigration is due to the 94 executive actions by the Biden administration as soon as he took office. Biden keeps talking about, oh, well, we need to work with the Republicans. No, he did 94 executive actions by the Biden administration, and until those executive actions are revoked, claims by the Biden administration that he wants to address illegal immigration are bold-faced, ladies and gentlemen, lies. And guess who said that? Not Tim McClone. That was from Elon Musk. He posted that on X. And I would have to concur with what he said. Okay? I was thinking when I read this, what Elon Musk said, and I was thinking about this problem. Well, all these problems we have right now. But remember the scene from Wall Street? That was a great movie. Not The Wolf of Wall Street, Wall Street, with Martin Sheen and Charlie Sheen, Oliver Stone. I have to, let's be honest, that's a remote drop movie. If that comes on, I put away 2 hours. I watch that movie once every 6-8 weeks anyway. This is such a great movie. And it's kind of in the family, so to speak, Wall Street movie. So, we're actually living the life a little bit. So there was a scene with Martin Sheen and Charlie Sheen, so son and father in real life. And the dad says to the son, he says, I have sins and I have flaws. I don't go to bed with no whore and I don't wake up with no whore. Ladies and gentlemen, that's true words never spoken by Martin Sheen to his son. I don't go to bed with no whore, and I don't wake up with no whore. That's how I live my life right now. And we're not living our life that way in the United States with what we're doing politically. We have a lot of whores that are waking up whores and going to bed as whores at night in our political establishment who don't care about this country and how they're destroying it for political power, money, giving money to foreign adversaries and countries, and selling this country out. That's what's going on. That's why the border's open. I'm, once again, Tim McClone's all for legal immigration, not illegal. No other country has an open border like this. And those ominous spending bills, that I opposed, that Donald Trump did, that Joe Biden did, we had border protection for 8 countries, Jordan, Ukraine. We're protecting their borders, but not our borders. And everyone should be disgusted because over 100 countries are coming across the border and no one is vetted. And drugs are coming across. The cartels have pushed way into the interior, and I have friends that are border agents, and I know what's going on. We're talking the cartels have pushed up to the Midwest. Want to bet? They're not just on Texas, Arizona, New Mexico. They pushed way into the interior. They're running the show. And eventually, ladies and gentlemen, the military is going to have to get involved and push them out because no one's going to put up with this. And they're going to have to be pushed back. So it's a very serious situation when you have 100 countries that aren't vetted, bringing in disease. And yes, it's all for giving people IDs and voting and spending a tremendous billions of dollars. I have friends that say, oh, they don't get freebies. Yes, they get freebies. They get cell phones. They get a money card. They get health insurance. I have a friend that runs 4 urgent care centers in Los Angeles. Extremely wealthy. Lives in the Oaks in Calabasas. And he's like, Tim, 99% of our patient population are migrants, no insurance. You get government help, what have you. So there's big money to be made off illegal immigration, from immigration lawyers to everything that's going on. It's a racket. People are making money off it. Trust me, it wouldn't be allowed if people weren't making money off it. But a lot of these people coming into this country, ladies and gentlemen, 80+% can't speak English. They're going to go right on the dole. They're not going to contribute to society and work at Goldman and Sachs. And don't tell me, oh, we need a bunch of cotton pickers and we need a bunch of dishwashers. We got a lot of those. But we have a lot of people that are going to come here and not work. Over 60% plus. You want to bet? They're not going to work and contribute to this country, which is what you had to do back in the day. As I said, we talk about the Statue of Liberty. We'll take your poor, we'll take your weak. But back in the day, if you wanted to work, you were worked on a farm, and you had to put in an honest day's work to rest your head at night, and that farmer would give you a bowl of soup or what have you. And that's how you earned your stay, and you did chores, and you got to eat, and maybe got a small wage. But that's the way it was. You had to work for your money, not come in, and because what's the biggest change? We became a welfare state. That's the biggest change from the Statue of Liberty. We'll take your poor, we'll take your weak, till we're a welfare state, and every country in the world wants to come here. And by the way, every country is not stupid. Venezuela, all these countries are emptying their prisons into our country. Look what's going on in Haiti right now. We got a ship coming from Haiti. Haiti's a failed state. The international community doesn't know what to do. We have cannibalism going on right now in Haiti. We got a warlord named Barbecue. It's made national news. Barbecue warlord likes to barbecue his victims and barbecue buildings. These people like to put tires over people's heads and set them on fire. It is a war zone in Haiti right now. We all know what was going on with the Clinton administration and their foundation with Haiti. They didn't help these people out, but they don't know what to do. And we got Haitians coming over, and they've emptied their, the worst of the worst might be coming over, but we don't care. Anyone can come to America. So we got a lot of problems. I mean, it just goes on and on. To transition off that. Police right now in Florida, and this goes to illegal immigration that I talked about, that poor young girl, Laken Riley, out of Georgia, and this gentleman who killed her, sexually assaulted, a child up in New York, was arrested in Venezuela and arrested in New York, but still he was able to leave New York and go down to Georgia, just committing crime after crime. Well, here we go in Florida. A Florida man raped a woman 5 weeks after release from prison for sexual assault of a minor. So he sexually assaults a minor. He rapes, a woman 5 weeks after release from prison for sexual assault of a minor. So, Florida, he's a convicted pedophile, has been arrested again less than 2 months after his release from prison for allegedly raping a random woman. He fouled her, asked her for a cigarette, and she was suspicious of this guy, and she didn't know what to do. She was scared, and her father eventually found her and got her out of harm's way, but not before this gentleman had her way with her and raped her. And like I said, this gentleman prior assaulted a child under the age of 12. And that has been reported. So here's a person, ladies and gentlemen, this person who was given multiple opportunities to rehabilitate, which is ridiculous, and he chose not to. That's from a sheriff. He fails to comply with his sexual predator designation and has returned to prison several times. Let me tell you right now, you want to end this? If you sexually assault a 12-year-old child, a harmless child, if you rape a woman, well, first off, if you sexually assault a child, that should be life in prison. If you rape a woman, that should be life in prison. Life in prison. No doubt about it. I would even go as far as if you sexually assault a 12-year-old child, you should be put on death row. And like I said, I had someone who commented, said, Tim, murder is worse than sex bullshit. You sexually assault a child who's 12 years old, an innocent child. You take their soul from them. They will never be the same the rest of their life. Even a child of 12. They'll remember that incident and it'll be implanted and you'll ruin their whole life. You deserve to be killed. 100%. This person deserves to be killed for sexually assaulting a 12-year-old child, and then he's given a pass, and then he gets out. If you sexually assault a 12-year-old child, it's going to be in your blood the rest of your life, and you want to do it over and over and over, and you want to abuse women, you deserve to be in prison the rest of your life. It doesn't matter what color your skin is. We know what's going on politically because one party doesn't want to be seen as racist because there might be a population of people arrested of a certain color that they don't like. It doesn't fit the demographic. But whether you're black, white, Indian, I don't care. We need to get crime off our street. If one race is committing more crime than others, so be it. It's disgusting. And blood's on your hands. So, moving on from that madness, I'm getting upset. But this is another issue that's big in the media right now. And it's going to affect global markets. It's going to affect business. They keep poking the Russian bear, ladies and gentlemen. Putin says Russia ready for nuclear war as West escalates Ukraine crisis. Ladies and gentlemen, this deep state that everyone talks about, and it does exist. There is a shadow government. It's nothing surprising. Remember Vigor Ramaswamy at the debate? Remember he said the president doesn't run the country? And all of a sudden they blipped it out. Oh my God, they don't want America to wake up. There's a famous speech when Ronald Reagan was giving a speech and a head banker was behind him. And the guy was telling him what to say. And you could see Ronald Reagan got muffled, like, oh my God, I got to say that. I just showed you right there, Ronald Reagan's not running the country. There's people that he answers to. So yeah, no, president doesn't run the country. Donald Trump was the first guy that didn't have 5,000 favors. They always say when you could finally become president, you have about 5,000 favors you have to give. Well, he didn't have 5,000 favors, but they thought that he would play ball with them and they could train him, but they couldn't. And then he got impeached for Ukraine. So the deep state keeps pushing NATO on Putin's border, and they keep pushing Ukraine and NATO to war with Russia. So Vladimir Putin said Wednesday that Russia's nuclear arsenal, it's a three-pronged arsenal of weapons launched from land, sea, and air, and it's much more advanced than that of the United States, in his opinion. Now, they've really juiced up their nuclear weapons, ladies and gentlemen, since the Cold War, and they have a larger nuclear weapons reserve than we do. But I mentioned this on a podcast a while back. I think it was a YouTube channel I mentioned it. The U.S. is 30 years ahead in the war machine than the American people know. We're 30 years ahead in technology, and the American people could only imagine what we have, stuff we were doing in the 60s with weather weapons and all these things. We are very advanced in our, war machine technology that we have, laser weapons, space weapons, Star Wars. And we would never let a country 86 us. That's just a way to get more funding for defense. Every year, Donald Trump, whether it's Joe Biden, the defense was depleted. We need another 700-800 billion. That's just a way to get more money. But we spend a lot of money on our defense. Yes, our tanks and some other things. But Putin does have larger nuclear reserves than we do, and he says. He says, they're not as ahead as we are, as far as the Americans aren't. We're much more advanced here than you could imagine. So he's throwing out some nuclear war rhetoric, but I would argue he's being pushed. NATO expanded, 1,000 miles east, and they promised Putin in the Minsk Accord agreements and other agreements that they wouldn't expand. They keep Ukraine neutral, but the only reason they did the Minsk Accords was to buy time so Ukraine could build up their army. They kind of. We do it to each other. Russia does it to us. We do it to them, but they lied to him. And he says, the nuclear weapons are finally ready from the military technological viewpoint. He said, we're prepared to use them in case there's a threat to the existence of Russia's state or their sovereignty and independence. We will never let it happen. We will never let Ukraine become part of NATO. And they know that. And the U.S. did a coup in 2014. We overthrew the president of Ukraine. It's well known, but a lot of Americans don't know that. And we've had bioweapons labs there since 14. Victoria Nuland admitted it. Marco Rubio probably asked the question the wrong way because he's trying to protect these people as well. But he tried to backtrack it. But she admitted it. There's bioweapons, and now we know the CIA has had bases there and is got their buildings set up with CIA assets and everything there since 2014, fighting a proxy war with Russia. We've been fighting Russia for the last 10 years there. So, right now, though, Putin, we got, that tough talk that he's spewing right now. He's got an election this week, and he's, of course, assured of winning to give him another 6-year term. So Putin says NATO troops in Ukraine, which is good, would not change the situation. He said in the same interview that Western countries sending troops to Ukraine wouldn't change the situation on the battlefield. He said, I think this is important, he said, if we talk about official military contingents of foreign countries, I am sure it will not change the situation on the battlefield. That is the most important thing, just as supplying arms does not change anything, Putin said. So if you guys remember what, the Polish prime minister and Mr. French leader Emmanuel Macron, and these guys aren't major players on the world stage. They think they are, in my opinion. Macron last month declined to rule out putting boots on the ground, a significant shift in rhetoric as Ukraine struggles on the battlefield. And also the Polish prime minister said, yeah, we can't rule that out of going in. Ladies and gentlemen, Putin knows if he would hit Poland, it would be World War III. And if Poland hits Russia, it would be World War III. And Russia hasn't even gone full scale yet. Ukraine is not, NATO is not prepared for what Russia could do. They have the Eastern Front, 30% Donetsk and other countries that they've taken over. If they would have cut a deal with Putin, he never would have got parts of Eastern Ukraine. He would just had Crimea, So if you look at the history, Russia was founded in Ukraine 1,000 years ago. And half of Ukraine is Russia. We have no business there. And Putin, their economy is the size of Italy, Texas. They have no desire to march across Europe and reinstall the Soviet Union. He did say that a little bit, but he said he's never going to go into Poland. He's never going to do that because he knows what that means. He knows what that means. So you got the Polish prime minister must have had one too many scotches, as well as the French leader Macron. We can't rule out going to war with Russia. No, and Macron, he's doubled down on his remarks. Several of Ukraine allies, including Washington, have, thank God, distanced themselves from the idea, which stunned many in Europe. So, I mean, these people are just insane. We have these war hawks, and I call out both sides. On the Democrat side, on the Republican side, there's war hawks on both sides that want to go to war with Russia. They want to keep poking the Russian bear. And Putin is holding restraint. He didn't want to go in Ukraine. From the evidence, I'm just talking the evidence, we forced him to go in. Well, we did. We lied to him. And we kept pushing NATO. Remember, Khrushchev put missiles in Cuba. What happened? We freaked out. We want to put nuclear weapons on his border. What do you think he's going to do? All I'm saying is he's a world leader, very powerful country, and he has nuclear weapons. More than we do. We should try to work with Putin because I think he does want to work. He's a thug. And I've always said every country has killed a lot of people, including the United States, in the name of democracy. So we need to work with Putin. And he wants to play ball, but we need to contain him, but we need to work with him. And I always said, keep your enemies close. When Bill Maher says, Putin, Donald Trump, it came out that, he didn't work with Russia and having phone calls with Putin, how ridiculous. But then Bill Maher says, well, Trump never denounced Russia. You don't call, as Joe Biden did, you don't call Vladimir Putin an assassin, needs to be assassinated, he's a thug and a punk. You start calling him all these terms when you have to work with this guy. You keep your enemies close. Donald Trump didn't give Vladimir Putin blankets, as another leader did in our country. He gave Ukraine Javelin missiles. And if you remember, there were no wars under Trump, which was nice. Just look at the tea leaves. Ukraine was controlled. Russia was controlled. Iran was controlled. My God, this guy called one of the ISIS leaders and said, we have your coordinates, longitude, and latitude. We're going to blow up your house. Enough is enough. He wiped ISIS out in a week and everything was quiet for 4 years. I understand defense contractors like to make money, and there's a lot of greed out there. But how greedy do you guys have to be? We're in Ukraine. Afghanistan was a debacle. I'm going to tell you something about Afghanistan. Donald Trump left troops there, but what no one talks about, including Bolton, and this is from Inside Info, they cut the drone and air support when Joe Biden got in office. Donald Trump left it. He left the drone and air support, and then in Afghanistan, then all of a sudden, look what happened. We run ISIS. We control them. They're our mercenary army. Give me a break. How do you know that? Look what happened when Donald Trump was in office. We could wipe ISIS out off the map. You know what's funny? Remember that picture, that famous picture of all those ISIS fighters in Mercedes-Benzes and cars going down the road in Iraq or wherever the hell they were? Do you know that we can, with our space weapons, we can, and you can look at the movie Clear and Present Danger, and that goes back, to the 90s. We can read a briefcase of a guy who's holding a briefcase in Midtown Manhattan from space and see the numbers on it. Okay, we can do a laser-guided bomb. And they're like, here's 200 ISIS fighters, they're going in. How did you get that picture? The CIA provided that picture. We could blow all those guys away with a laser-guided bomb and just paint those guys and blow them all up. It's unbelievable. And they're acting like, they take a picture of these guys. Oh, ISIS is coming in to take over. We could blow those guys up in 2 seconds. So we had peace and prosperity under Donald Trump. That's a fact. We have the war hawks on both sides that want war. And when the economy is not doing well, the war machine brings in the money. And that's all I'm saying. I got my problems with both political parties, but I don't like war. I like my taxes low. I like inflation low. There's going to be a lot of opportunity from an investment standpoint. Doesn't matter to me who's president because I make money either way. Rents go up. But I don't like what's going on in this country with illegal migration, with people disrespecting the flag. I've always said this: America, love it or leave it. And that's the problem. And that's why I started this podcast when I talked. The major concern right now, above the border, above inflation, is freedom of speech. And that's what makes our country unique. And that's what we have to fight for. And that's what I'm fighting for. I believe everyone has a right to speak. I want to hear other people with points of view that might disagree with me. We can agree to disagree and have a civil conversation. That's what makes this country unique. And we have a political party, I would argue, and even some people on the rhino side that want to take that away. They want to take that away and control the narrative. And it's wrong. I'll tell you, the greatest development they made was the television. What an invent! Right away they're like, we're going to invent this thing called the TV and just spew out propaganda 24/7. I am telling you, and it works. I mean, 80% of America, God, is snowed, and they actually believe what they hear through that TV. I mean, I remember when I was on airplanes during COVID, and people are like, "Oh my God, the current president's working with Russia. Oh my God, the voting was stolen." Ladies and gentlemen, the voting machines aren't connected to the internet. You can't change a vote. Oh my God, there were $200,000 in Facebook ads that Russia did. Every country tries to interfere in elections, and we interfere in Russia's. We overthrow governments. Our country has overthrown more governments than any country in the world. Please. So I mean, all countries, but the polling machines aren't connected to the internet. So the only way to vote is absentee balloting, or going to pull the lever. That's the most honest way how you stop fraud. You don't do mail-in ballots or stuffing ballot boxes. You have an absentee ballot, and you have to show your license. You got to show your license to get a credit card, right? You got to show your license to go to a ball game. The most important right you have is voting in elections, and you should have to show your license. It's an insult to African Americans, blacks, and to say that you're too stupid to get a license. It's insulting. So, come on, please. So, moving on, we're gonna kind of touch base on inflation and a little real estate. Since Biden took office, ladies and gentlemen, sugar's up 44%, bread's up 30%, butter's up 27%, chicken's up 26%, eating out is up 21%. Food at home is up 21%. Rent is up 20%. Homeowners insurance, and I've talked about this, especially in Florida, is up over 100%. Florida, 300% in Florida. You think you're going to save money going to Florida? 300% insurance. I got a client, a senior out there who's a friend of my dad's. I'm helping her get out of there. She had a $1,600 payment, which was doable a month. They would choke her to $4,000 a month. So now mortgage rates are highest in decades, but historically still low, I would argue. Used cars are up 45%. I would argue, ladies and gentlemen, what really happened is the value of the U.S. dollar has fallen by nearly 25% since 2020. The price is kind of like a trick word used by the government to disguise the truth. Okay, so to pay for spending increases, President Biden says he will make the wealthy, here we go again, ladies and gentlemen, he's going to make the wealthy pay their fair share. He said that includes rising the marginal corporate tax income rate to a 28% and imposing a minimum of 25% tax on unrealized income of the wealthiest households. Ladies and gentlemen, what do corporations do when they're taxed to hell? They pass the tax on to the consumer and raise their price of goods and services. Okay, so Biden calls for basically $7.3 trillion in new spending. We don't need any new spending right now because of inflation. And I'm gonna touch on this because this is something I've harped on my YouTube channel for a year and a half. And I said over a year and a half ago that what Janet Yellen, Jerome Powell said when they called it transitory, and Janet Yellen admitted she got political. She was going to the White House. They shouldn't be going to the White House. And they got political and they told her to say, hey, don't scare the American public. We're going to say it's transitory. And now she's finally come out and admitted it again because it was bullshit. And I'm going to say this about Yellen. I know her history and I know someone that knows her. She is a brilliant woman. And Treasury Secretary Yellen said, I regret saying inflation was transitory. 3 years after insisting inflation was transitory. I said 3 years ago in a video that she's full of shit. And I turned out to be right. So Yellen finally admits she was wrong as inflation continues to persist. The Biden Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen expressed regret for advancing the false talking point that inflation in the U.S. was transitory. She was told to say that. So after, remember she first proclaimed in 2021 that inflation was transitory phenomena, which basically means it's only short term. She finally admitted Wednesday on Fox Business that she was wrong about inflation as it continues to persist in America. I regret saying inflation was transitory, Yellen said. It has come down, but I think transitory means, a few weeks to months to most people. So I was wrong. So Janet Yellen, along with Joe Biden and Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell insisted in 2021 that inflation was transitory as it was climbing to 9% year over year. So you fast forward 3 years later, and inflation has decreased to about, 3%? Still over the Fed's arbitrary target rate of 2%. So, come on. The devastating effects of inflation are still being felt right now, and they've remained with most goods and services skyrocketing by at least 20% across the board, folks. However, the trade deficit, national debt, credit card debt, and government spending continue to rise at breakneck pace are indicators that inflation will likely to continue to track back up. And it's been happening in the coming months and years until the government spending is reduced or the Fed greatly, raises interest rates to discourage rampant borrowing. So remember in the beginning of the year, the Fed's we're going to decrease interest rates maybe 4 to 6 times. And I said, woo, you got to read between the lines on that. So now Jerome Powell comes out. We got a new word. We got a new word, ladies and gentlemen. He said inflation is moving more sideways than down. Unbelievable. You see the word games, and it could keep the Fed from cutting rates anytime soon. So the Wall Street woke up to a nasty surprise this morning, ladies and gentlemen. From a night of models and bottles and cocaine, fueled by rising rents and gas prices, U.S. inflation rose slightly to 3.2% year over year last month. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, we got the real data. It's higher. So after a 2-year run of interest rate hikes to combat rising inflation, it's done nothing. So the good old street is expecting the Fed to begin cutting interest rates later this year. Don't hold your breath. But from my talks internally with lenders and the VA, and some other people, it's an election year, don't remember, and Joe Biden wants to get reelected. So he could possibly cut rates for that reason a few times. So, Jerome Powell is kind of going back and forth on this. So we got an uptick in inflation, would seem to throw cold water on their narrative, in my opinion. But the headline number doesn't tell the full story, folks. Top economists are saying, take them with a grain of salt, man. I've destroyed some of these cats, and I got the documentation. So while the so-called hot inflation rate might give the Fed more cause for caution, it likely won't change the central bank's long-term plan. That's from a real estate perspective. I paraphrase some of that there. That's from Lawrence Yun. He's a chief economist for the National Association of Realtors. He's been good on some things, and some other people that I follow just to have corroboration. So when you talk about like housing and shelter, that decelerated to 5.2, or I think about 5.7, 5.8%, which kept the overall CPI above 2% target. So when you kind of look at overall, though, lower rent growth is implied from a range of unofficial private sector data. So the latest data does not fundamentally change what the Fed will likely do. They're saying 3 rate cuts this year. 3 rate cuts. So the Fed's going to meet next week to discuss interest rates. And I think this report will seriously probably be on Fed Chair Jerome Powell's mind, along with the Biden administration calling him saying, hey, pal, cut those rates. It's an election year. So you might want to hold out and see what happens until the spring. Although, like I said, I'm looking for an investment in a couple states right now, and they're cutting prices and they're calling me back. So go in 25 to 40% off asking price and deal with that, 0.5 or 1% higher interest rate if you're not paying cash. So, the Fed's 2% target, it's not going to happen. But this month's, I think the Fed will probably be looking for more confirmation that the economy is on the right track before they cut rates. And it's not on the right track, folks. So, and Jerome Powell, continuing on the real estate line, says the housing market is in a very challenging situation right now. So inflation is sideways, not going up. And we're challenging in the housing market. Oh, that's true, sir. And he says interest rate cuts alone won't solve a long-running inventory crisis. So, there's a few things going on. Everyone talks about this. The housing market, definitely has a problem, millions of them. The country is short between 3.5 to 5.5 million housing units, according to various estimates. And, the the roots of the shortage go back to the aftermath of the global financial crisis. I would say this, ladies and gentlemen, this is from builders on the ground that I have contacts with in Idaho, Arizona, Nevada, out east. There's thousands of homes that have been built that are not on the MLS yet because they're purposely keeping inventory low. What do you think of that? They're playing a shell game. There's a lot of homes that have been built. They're not putting them on the market. They don't want to flood the market. They want to look like inventory is low. So keep that in mind, because I've seen it firsthand driving into these sites. Thousands of homes built, not on the market yet. Built, sitting there for 5, 8, 9 months, a year even. Take that in. So, this is true with the global financial crisis. Developers are a little more hesitant to invest in new construction and set a precedent of undersupply that's continued now. That's from Jerome Powell. I don't agree with that. I think builders are going gangbusters right now, and they're offering buy downs. They're, offering incentives with the buy downs, but they're putting cheaper appliances in. That's why I recommend if you buy a new home, you do it yourself. Don't go with the options because they rip the hell out of you. Negotiate those options higher, but they're not putting in the Wolf appliances, which is what I expect. They're not putting in the Viking. They're putting in the cheap appliances. They're putting in the cheap molding, cheaper countertops, but they're going to give you that buy down. So, along the lines of real estate, I like to use New York as a benchmark. I do love New York to go visit. New York housing rents spike as Democrats welcome endless lines of illegals. I've talked about this in the past, and it's causing rents to go up because of all the migrants. So ahead of the November elections, the Democrats have stuffed the illegals in schools, hotels, community centers. I've had some friends call me that work in finance out there, unbelievable, and have even wanted to give them debit cards preloaded with taxpayer funds. 100% true, folks. So one can only assume that the government placing these migrants in apartments across the city will only make the housing affordability crisis worse. Okay, so New Yorkers are grappling with skyrocketing housing rents despite rents across the nation slowing. So if not reversing in some cases. So a lack of affordable housing is driving shelter costs higher in the progressive metro areas. Obviously plagued with, elevated living costs. You got a migrant crisis. You got worsening violent crime wave in every major city. I look at a number of rental sites. This is kind of my passion when I talk about rental market, and there's a lot of sites I look at. So if you look at a one-bedroom rentals in New York surged about 18 to 19% in February to a record high. One-bedroom apartment in New York, $4,200 a month. It's puzzling to consider who would choose to live there, in my opinion. But I'm telling you, a lot of people that I know, they don't care. They want to go. Even if you look at median rents in Jersey City, located across the Hudson River from Manhattan, rose 5.4% to $3,140. In Jersey City, baby. So when you look at across the country holistically, rents across the country have decreased by 0.7%. I just talked to a friend though in LA. He just put a one bedroom. No, it was a two bedroom, 2,800. And not even a prime area, not even close. It rented in 2 days. So, February represented the fifth straight month of flat or declining year-over-year rent changes nationwide, yet the trend of cooling rental prices does not apply to New York City, folks, where a housing shortage continues. So, along those lines, what's going to happen with the global markets? Well, they're not going to crash the market. I'm putting money in the market right now because it's an election year. But hedge fund icon said, a hedge fund icon said that we're just 2 years away from U.S. debt sustainability crisis, sparking a major global market event. The main source of long-run upward pressure on the primary deficit is spending on, mandatory programs such as Social Security and Medicare. We're in a pressure cooker right now. He said this pressure was absent after World War II because the overall U.S. population was younger and because Medicare was not enacted until 1965. So, the last time the debt as a share of GDP was this large was roughly 1945, 1946 at the end of World War II. So, it's very interesting. So, over the following 3 decades, if you look at debt to GDP ratio, steadily fell, reaching roughly 25% by 1975. So this is from the Fed, a couple hedge fund guys too. So they seem to think, their crystal ball, they have a growing conviction in the next 2.5 years we're going to face a U.S. major debt sustainability crisis, sparking a major global market event. Yeah, it'll probably happen under the next president, whether it's Joe Biden or Donald Trump. You know, I'm hearing that from some institutional bankers that something's going on, and they're kind of remaining quiet right now, shall I say? And I'm going to know more in a couple weeks. There's a few major conference calls coming up, so it's just worried about the debt to GDP ratio is reaching 172% over 24 to 2054, 172% increase. And that's when you just look at the current Congressional Budget Office projections. And the Fed projects a longer term real Fed funds rate of 0.50%. So it's just and their median projection for long run real GDP growth is 1.8%. They highlighted that the CBO, however, forecast a lower 1.5% real GDP growth rate and a longer term real interest rate on U.S. debt by 2%. So when you talk about, roughly slow economic growth relative to interest rates would, probably exert a modest upward pressure on the debt ratio, primarily from higher interest rate payments. So the main source of the long run upward pressure on the primary deficit is spending on mandatory programs, as I said, such as Social Security, Medicare. Current legislative formulas used to determine spending for Social Security benefits and government health care programs, especially Medicare. And when you talk about the combined with the projected that are factored into this, the aging of the population, it points to, it's highlighted in red, large increases in spending for these programs as the share of GDP. So get ready. And you're feeling it right now in healthcare. Right now, this is interesting. Doctor offices are charging administrative fees. Some hospitals are now charging patients for services such as email consultations and additional paperwork. Unbelievable. First world country supposed to have the best healthcare in the world. So it's as if the cost of healthcare, rising wasn't enough on its own. Some doctors' offices are now charging their patients for administrative tasks, and that's according to multiple media outlets. Doctors say administrative tasks are taking more time away from patient care. We need some cash for the bottom line. Unbelievable. So they're charging patients for services such as email consultations, additional paperwork, aiming to offset losses from decreased in-person visits. Yeah, it doesn't end. It just doesn't end. They're a bunch of crooks, man. They do seem to think that a solution down the road, both political parties think that AI is going to wind up leading to the solution for all of our problems. Bottom line is, folks, let me tell you what's going on, really. You read between the lines on this? Translation, they're coming after your Social Security, Medicare, retirement, everything that you paid for your whole life, so we can give it to our criminal friends on Wall Street and K Street, baby, because our money changing, it's ruined everything, in my opinion. And then, they're going to go to a digital coin that I've talked about on my YouTube channel. So you can't have a $5 transaction with a friend without the government knowing and getting their taste. Oh my God, you got your hair cut for $21. The government wants to know. Oh, we're only going to go after the 1,000 billionaires or less. We're not going to go after the little guy. Give me a break. They're going to monitor your haircuts. They're going to monitor if you're selling something on Craigslist. That's how intrusive they want to get. They want their taste. So if you talk about inflation, and I've talked about this in the past, the problem, is inflation because of a 1913 corrupt central banking interest rate scam that's ruined our money, in my opinion. Not an aging population spending on Medicare and Social Security. These are programs, people, ladies and gentlemen, pay into their whole lives. And now they want to take that away because they're sucky right now, and it is happening. Banking scams are coming to an end. Think of FTX, all the insiders that were involved in that. Please, please, so they could give to political parties. All the regional banks that are getting sucked dry. It's such a scam. Now they're going to come after your Medicare and Social Security. I mean, if you follow this stuff, one of my news feeds, kind of follows the Congress real closely. And if some important legislation comes in, I get emailed on it and I chime in and watch. And it's in the news lately. Well, Social Security and Medicare and what they're trying to do. And if you see what they're powwowing about, they're coming after it. They want it all. They want more. They want it all, man. They're taking everything. So, well, we got to see the half glass full, not half empty, and keep driving and keep pushing. But this stuff is all intertwined, so it's important to talk about. The inflation for investing, what's going on in real estate in certain cities kind of sets the tone. You talk about New York, what's going on with rents across America, and what's going on with rents and the shortages. But there's a shell game going on. And I don't believe in just reading. I believe in boots on the ground. That's why I'm doing a lot of traveling the next 2 weeks and talking to people, seeing it firsthand through my own eyes. And when I look at the investing, when I look at homes and real estate, and I'm talking to people and I'm meeting people about the market, it just kind of puts things in their perspective. And a lot of people are kind of quiet right now, and they're saying some things that are worrisome, but it's kind of you got to read between the lines of what they're saying. And I'm just trying to piece it all together right now, but I'm very concerned. This is a very volatile year, but the market, I'm not going to want to crash the market in an election year. A lot of stuff is going on right now, so you got to have to be creative out there and be careful. So that concludes the Mac Oligarchy podcast. And like I always said, it's a long way to the top if you're on a rock and roll. And America, love it or leave it. Take care. Till the next podcast. Be safe.